The month of July can be very, very hard on tomatoes. Intense heat, critters and pests, humidity, and excess rain can absolutely stop tomatoes in their tracks. But today I'm going to show you what to do about it so your tomatoes keep producing all summer long and even into the fall. The first issue that a lot of us are having with tomatoes in July is nutrient depletion. The soil, just plain and simple, runs out of gas. Now, some signs of this could be some yellowing leaves here, maybe stunted growth, maybe your tomatoes aren't getting as big as you'd like them to be. In the case of this mushroom basket tomatoes, these should be quite large tomatoes. Right now, they're pretty small. So that tells me that I need to replenish the soil of nutrients. Because tomatoes are heavy feeders. They not only get depleted of nitrogen in the soil, but also the phosphorus and potassium, which really helps the plant growth. What I'm going to show you here is a 3-step nutrient refueling process for your plants. So what I'm doing here, first off, is adding compost. Now, compost is nature's best fertilizer, especially when it's homemade in your own garden. And it's going to not only help with soil aeration, if it gets compacted, but will add essential nutrients to your soil. So I'm just going to grab a handful and just add it to the base of each plant. Now, you don't have to go crazy with this, especially if your compost supply is limited. So just add it in here and then just kind of scratch it in with your hands and do that to each tomato plant in your garden. And if you don't have compost or if you can't find it at your local garden center, I highly recommend adding a handful of the Bumper Crop by Master Nursery organic soil builder, and you can find this at your local independent garden centers. Look at bumpercrop.com to find a store location near you, and then call and ask them to make sure they have Bumper Crop before you go to the store. All kinds of good fertilizers in it, along with worm casting, mycorrhiza, things that'll really help your tomato plant growth take off. Second step in your nutrient reset for your tomatoes is you've got to give them some additional nutrients, but not just any nutrients. You really need a fertilizer, a plant food that's higher in phosphorus, because this is what makes the flowering and fruiting really take off for your plants. So I use the tomato and vegetable food. It's got a 6 in phosphorus. This is also by Bumper Crop. And again, don't go crazy with it. Just a small handful around each plant is all you need. Just kind of scratch it in there around the base of the plant. And this will really give the tomato plant the food that it needs to take off. I mean, tomatoes get depleted of energy just like we do, and you've got to have that additional food if you want them to keep growing and keep producing tomatoes for you for the rest of the season. And it really does make a huge difference. Now, the compost, the soil amendment that I added, and the plant food are all slow-released or time-release fertilizers. So you've got to get something that's quick release that gives the tomato plants immediate boost of energy. And for that, I use a water-soluble fertilizer. So super important that you use a good combination of each. And for this, my go-to is the Monterey Fish and Guano. It's got the fish for the nitrogen, which gives it a little bit more boost of the green leafy growth, but it also has a 6 for potassium, which again helps with the flowering and fruiting. And the nitrogen in this particular fertilizer also comes in 3 different forms. So it's not this big, huge push of nitrogen all at once. It releases at different times throughout the rest of the growing season. And when you feed your plants with the slow release, the quick release liquid actually helps activate the slow release fertilizers or plant foods that I just added, helps break them down, and then makes them available to the plant that much quicker. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm liquid feeding is actually do a foliar feeding. So that's basically pouring the liquid fertilizer over the leaves, and tomato plants and all the plants in your garden actually absorb the food or the liquid fertilizer quicker through the leaves than anything else. So this is really an immediate boost for your tomato plants, and really helps them when they've stalled out to really kick them back into high gear. So I'll give them a nice foliar feeding, and then also a nice soil drench. So here I'm watering it. I'm letting it soak in a little bit, and then I'm watering again so that good plant food gets all the way down to the roots where it can be fully utilized by the plant. And this 3-step nutrient reset will really help your tomatoes make it through the month of July and even thrive even in the summer heat. The second biggest problem that face tomatoes in July is flowers but no fruit. Now, there's a couple different reasons for this. The first one might be your flowers are actually drying up and dropping off because of extreme heat. And that's a huge issue in July for a lot of us. What I do for that is shade cloth. I'm a huge shade cloth proponent. So once it gets over 90 degrees, that's what's going to happen to the flowers. They're going to dry up, drop off, you're not going to get fruit, and then your tomato plant has to start completely over. So shade cloth will help protect your flowers from this issue. So when days get over 90, I simply keep some shade cloth around, drape it over my tomato trellis here. And luckily we haven't had too many days over 90 this summer, so I've only had to do this a couple of times. But it really does go a long way towards protecting your fruit. And we were gone last week and it hit 90 a couple of days. I wasn't able to cover with shade cloth the whole time, and the garden really took a beating. It can actually stay about 10 to 15 degrees cooler under the shade cloth, which can really help protect your tomatoes and keep them producing all month long. Now, the second issue is you might have flowers, but you're not getting enough fruit. And one of the reasons for this is the heat can actually make the pollen sticky inside the flower. Now, tomato plants do have both male and female parts inside the flower, but the pollen has to move around, and if the pollen is sticky, it's going to have a harder time moving around. So what I like to do is whenever I walk by my tomato plants, I just kind of very gently shake them to move the pollen around, which helps produce more tomatoes. You could also use an electric toothbrush and gently vibrate the top of the flowers here to help your tomatoes fruit out. The third big issue affecting tomato plants in July is that disease might be spreading like crazy in your garden. The heat, the humidity, excess rain really takes a toll and is hard on your tomato plants. So you can see right here, I do have a plant that for some reason got some kind of disease and is just not going to make it. So for plants like this, I will completely cut that plant out. There's no sense trying to revive it. Sometimes it's a whole lot more difficult to save a struggling plant when I could just plant a new one and start over and have much better luck. But I'm actually just going to clear this plant out for now to give more airflow to my tomato string trellis area. That way, if it is a disease that will spread to my other tomato plants, this will remove it from the area and stop the disease from spreading. The second thing I'm going to do is to prune any yellowing or disease-looking leaves on my tomato plant, because once it starts, it spreads. And by removing the diseased leaves, like this one here, it's yellowing and spotted, I'm going to actually take off the whole branch, not just the leaf. And at this time of the year, actually all year long, what I do is I dip my pruners in isopropyl alcohol. This goes a really long way towards stopping the spread of disease from plant to plant. And it also helps the plant kind of heal over from the wound that I'm creating from the cut. So I do this each time I cut. Then I'll go through here and clean this plant up and remove all the yellowing or spotted leaves. This also creates more airflow throughout the plant, and more airflow means less chance of disease. Take this one off here in the front. Got some yellowing leaves. I got one more in the back there. You do want to be really careful with this. I like to use these precision pruners and get as close to the main stem as possible. And on this particular plant, I have to be really careful because I've got my tomato string right here as well. And if I cut that tomato string, the tomato plant will have no support. So really take care when you do this. Besides pruning off the diseased leaves, it's super important this time of the year to keep the bottom 6 inches or so of your plant free of leaves touching the ground for airflow. Because once you have more airflow, your plants are going to dry off, they're going to have less chance of disease, and you have less chance of soil splash from the ground to the plants. So these ones look pretty good, but there are a few I'm going to go in here and clip off, these tiny little stems here at the bottom. Plant doesn't really need those anyway. Then we're just going to go through this little garden bed here. Got a bunch of herbs, so don't need to prune those. Got a couple little stems down in here that need taken off, because if I don't catch them when they're young, they're going to get bigger, and then it'll be a lot harder to manage the pruning at that point in time. So you really want to go through and prune up the bottom of your tomato plants about once a week or so, as well as check for diseased leaves and take those off too. It's so frustrating during the month of July when something is eating your tomatoes, whether it's bugs, critters, rats, birds, or squirrels. That can be the most frustrating thing for a lot of us gardeners. Now, I just spotted here a pretty nasty looking bug that is chewing away at my basil plant, and most likely it's going to move onto my tomato plant. So we definitely want to take care of bugs, and go back and watch our video last week where I talked exactly how to take care of both chewing insects and sucking insects, and it's super, super effective. But one of the biggest problems I'm having right now is squirrels, possums, and things eating my tomatoes. So I have a couple of different methods to help with this. One thing I like to use is this very simple tool. You can purchase this at any fabric store, and it's super easy just to pop this around maybe your prized tomatoes, like this one here. This is absolutely gorgeous, big, huge. I think it's an Aunt Ruby's German green tomato. And I'm just gonna pop this tool around it to help give a little bit of a barrier to the rats and the possums and the birds. Of course, no guarantees here, but we do as much as we can to protect our tomatoes. I'm just gonna kind of clip this on here to make a little barrier. So that's one thing I like to use. The other thing I like to use are these little net bags. These are super convenient, a little bit easier than the tool because they already have this drawstring kind of built in. I know it takes a lot of extra time to do this, but it is worth it to have tomatoes as opposed to no tomatoes. Quick little drawstring. We'll just tighten it around the plant. And then you can do that to your tomatoes on the plant. If you're having a huge problem with it though, you may want to purchase some of the ag fabric and completely enclose and wrap your whole entire tomato plant in that ag fabric. Really goes a long way. Now, something that's super helpful for birds, and I like to kind of keep my little tomato solution bucket here with a couple different of my tomato things to help out. My netting, my isopropyl alcohol, my tomato clips, a couple other things we'll be using later in the video. This reflective tape you can hang from your trellises to scare the birds away. So this reflector tape is super handy to hang off the top of your trellises. This one I've got to use a step ladder to get up to because the tomato string trellis is very tall. But you want to clip a length enough to kind of blow in the wind. And this stuff is super handy. So I'm just going to clip off some of that and then tie it to the top of my tomato string trellis. And you can see how it'll blow in the wind here and scare the birds away. So you don't want them eating your tomatoes. I'm going to tie the next one a little bit longer so it actually hangs down to where my tomatoes are. And you can see how different lengths of the reflector tape really help scare the birds away at the top and at the bottom. So wherever you're having issues with birds, this stuff is really handy, and I'll put a link for this in the video description. Now, a lot of times when the birds are eating your tomatoes, they're thirsty. So besides the reflective tape, another thing I like to do, actually Jerry does this really well, is set up bird baths around the garden so that the birds have something to drink, and it really does help them stay away from our tomatoes. Now, these are a couple of our favorites. These actually light up at night, so we really enjoy watching them from the deck at night. But during the day, we often see the birds kind of splashing around in here, drinking the water, and they even like to drink out of our fountain right here. So he's actually set a couple of these bird baths all around the garden, 2 down here, and then 1 right behind us, right here. This actually helps keep them off of my berries right here too. And thanks to 808 Ladybug, Jan in Hawaii, for turning us on to these. And one thing we love them is they're also solar powered. So I'll drop a link down below in the video description for these also. Now, the last biggest problem that most gardeners face in July is tomato plants just suddenly collapsing and dying. Now, I showed you one earlier in the video that I decided just to completely cut out. These ones in here are just not thriving. They didn't get enough sunlight. They got attacked by heat, bugs, disease. For some reason, they're just not doing well. So you always have to have backups. So it's a good idea this time of the year to start some backups. Now, determinate tomatoes grow quickly, produce quickly, so it's always a good idea to start a brand new crop of determinate tomatoes at this point in the season. They grow to a set size, they produce quickly, and most likely you can get a crop within a couple of months. So here I've got some Oregon Spring and Tiny Tims, which I started a couple of weeks ago from my late summer garden seed collection. Always good to start those determinants right now in July to keep your production going. Now, the indeterminate tomato plants, it's a little bit late to start from seed right now because they grow slower, they take longer to produce. But what I like to do always at this time of the year is to cut some suckers off of some of my favorite determinate varieties and then root them in water so that I can then I can plant them outside in about a month or so. So it just kind of gives me a jump on production. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite tomato plants, the mushroom basket. You can see the tomatoes right through here. They have beautiful ridged edges and they're just a gorgeous tomato. So what I'm going to do is take a sucker from this plant, and this sucker is a production stem, and it's the little stem that comes out in between the armpit of the tomato. So I'm going to cut that. And you want to take a sucker from a healthy plant. This is a nice healthy sucker. It's a couple of inches long. And what I'm going to do with that is just put it in a glass of water. And you can also root suckers right in the ground, but I found that they root quicker if you put them in a glass of water out of direct sunlight on your windowsill. In just a couple of weeks, it'll grow roots out from the bottom, and then you can plant this as a brand new fresh plant, and you'll get a big jump on your tomato harvest. So that way you're not losing weeks of production from plants that are dying. This way you're starting with fresh plants rather than putting all your resources into trying to save a struggling plant. July can be super hard on your tomatoes, but now you know what to do. So your job for this week is get out there and do it. The sooner the better. Your tomatoes will thank you. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.